Okay, so hopefully you've got a good view there. Everyone see the agenda?
Yeah.
And I did resend out this evening.
Do you wanna bring?
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
I don't have my one much today.
5:59.
5:59, so we'll call the meeting to order.
Yep.
Anybody have any changes or additions to the agenda?
No.
Motion to approve the April 6th minutes?
And just to explain, I resent them out this afternoon because I discovered I hadn't changed the who was actually at the last meeting, who was the meeting before, so anyways, I have those revised ones here for us to sign off on.
Great.
Alright, so you're gonna motion it?
Well, I don't have a complaint, but I don't remember that we said that we weren't gonna meet in July and August, but that's fine, I don't remember that part.
Yeah.
Yeah, I actually have that in my actual
Okay,
handwritten
perfect.
minutes, yeah.
Okay,
So Tom, you've motioned to move it forward,
Second.
second is Lisa. So
All in
yeah,
favor, anybody opposed?
okay, great, alright. Alright, so that was that, and then, before we get off of that, if you could sign twice.
I thought today was.
it's Cinco de
Oh,
Mayo.
it's not that.
Holes, I will slide under there, you're all witnessing that, I delivered them. Okay, so Matt, I think you are the agenda, right? Yep.
Yeah, okay. Let me just share my screen here. Oh, I think I need permission to
Oh,
share my screen.
alright.
Just hit allow, the blue box.
Blue block, oh, there you go, sorry. Perfect, see?
Okay. Very good. Let's see. Okay. So I'll start off. We can talk about. Are you all able to see that?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay, great. So first I'll talk just about, I know we want to talk about the public meeting, which is still a ways off, but talking about possible dates for that, and then we can go over the survey questions. And then I can talk a bit just about the two spreadsheets I had sent, looking at, as we're all familiar with, the recommendations in the town plan that relate to possible zoning updates, and then also my review of your current zoning as compared to the major provisions in the statute related to zoning. So, and just quickly too, so I had scheduled a meeting with the Weston DRB for June 3rd, but they have two public hearings that night. So I was just in touch with Will and Deb today, and I'm gonna go to their meeting on July 1st instead for the DRB. I think we talked about it might be beneficial to have one planning commission member attend that meeting as well, just to.
Yes, July 1st. I think I'm gonna be in Delaware on July 1st.
Okay. I think, well, because, so we're doing a meeting in May, we'll have a June meeting. In June, let's figure out who we'll do, because we're not gonna do July and August, we'll figure it out then. And just to also note, Lexi and I go to select board next week to meet, to take the notes you gave us and to review that with them.
Okay.
What day of the week is that? Tuesday?
Tuesday.
Yeah, okay.
7 o'clock.
Okay.
Yeah,
So
July
it's
1st I won't be
12.
here, so.
Okay. That sounds good. Do you does anyone happen to know if the select, and maybe this is something they're going to talk about next week, if they've talked about the public hearing for the other zoning bylaw?
So I did relay that directly to Kim and to Patty, the new person. So I know that it's been I thought it was gonna be a topic at the next meeting. I'm sorry, I didn't check their notes to see if they covered it last week, but we can do that before the day is, I can do that actually as we're sitting here. Unless I'll double multitask and see if I can find what they did at that meeting.
Okay, and I can always follow up with Patty too. Um, and we can talk about this too more at the June meeting once people have a chance to look at their calendars, but just providing you with the dates in September. I know I'd be available for a public kickoff meeting. Um, so any of those dates would work for me.
So do we wanna try right now to see if we can nail it?
Yeah.
I know I'm not gonna be here the 9th, the 10th, the 15th, or the 16th,
Okay.
be in Delaware,
So the 20. So,
second, 23rd. Actually, the 9th, because I'm gonna probably go on the Thursday, so I could do the 9th, or the 22nd or the 23rd.
yeah, I think I may be in Portugal on the 22nd, 23rd.
So the 9th?
9th works for
Anybody
me.
else?
That's a Tuesday.
I could do the 9th.
Okay.
9th is, September 9th is a Wednesday.
Oh,
Yeah.
whoops, I'm looking at the wrong one.
Yeah, and actually, I don't think that's a bad, Wednesday is a good day.
Yeah.
It's early in the period, so we'd still have
Time.
time. It's schools have started again, that's no worries. Yeah,
So that's the public meeting we're talking about?
Yes.
Yeah. That'll just be the kind of kickoff meeting.
What's the guess on attendance and something like that?
The guest on attendance? Well, we had good attendance at the town plan
You
meeting.
know, this is different, I think.
Yeah,
I-
usually zoning is a little less.
I think this is, and didn't we have two meetings on then or?
yes, we did do two meetings because we're delivering the survey results.
Right, right.
But I think to your point, I think the town plan is more interesting to the population because it's about where you're going. And I think people had a lot to say to that. I just don't see this getting that type of response. So I would support one meeting. And I think I think we'll have a series of options. My suspicion is we're gonna hold it next door at the
New library.
new library. So I will reach out to Deb. I'll take that. I'll reach out to Deb Granquist and just see if we can get on for using the library for that meeting. Because the WCAR building won't be open and we're restricted on ability to have people in it until we're off the insurance that we're gonna be on. So, okay, so let's say the 9th and I'll check with Deb. Wednesday.
Sounds good. Okay.
There you go. Cool.
Great. And so the draft survey questions, I sent those out last week. Hopefully folks had a chance to those. I mean, similar to the survey we did for the town plan update, I like to keep surveys short, not too many questions, just because if you make them too long, people will give up and not complete the survey, and then trying to have some open-ended questions in there as well. So the first few questions I have in there are just trying to get a sense of like familiarity and maybe experience people have had with the zoning bylaws. So this is just taken from the document that I sent last week. So asking how familiar someone is with the bylaws and a range of options. Which of the following standards in the bylaws do you find to be unclear or confusing, and providing some different options there and some descriptions too, to just because I know what dimensional standards mean, but for someone that doesn't have as much experience with zoning, they might have no idea what that means. So trying to give some examples of what these different broad categories may include. And then a question too, if someone has gone through the application process, either for a zoning permit or needing to go to the the DRB, if there were any particular steps in that process that were confusing. And of course, with these questions too, wherever we can, we always provide an option, another option for people to kind of write in their own response, just because we can't we can't anticipate all the responses that we might get. Um, any questions about these first three questions? Um, and the next one, so this is kind of a broad question about different zoning districts in town, and then the types of uses that people would like to see more of in those different areas. This is more generalized, so we need to provide a kind of a general description of these different areas without, we're not able to show an actual zoning map, but this provides a general description of four different areas in town. So the Village District is pretty obvious, focused around the historic village of Weston. Residential neighborhoods, these are primarily already subdivided and developed, so more moderate density residential areas. So this would include a description of where some of those neighborhoods are, just kind of providing an example of what those types of areas in town are. Rural areas, so those are lower density residential areas. They have more open lands, and again, providing some of the major roads in town that are more characterized by the rural land development patterns. And then conservation areas, much of this land is in conservation and national forest or state forest land, but there are some large forest tracts south of Chester Mountain Road, and then going north along Route 155 out of town. So there are private forest lands too that are not conserved. So this question, I can't show it here, but in SurveyMonkey, it would be set up so that it's kind of a grid. So you have the four different land use areas in a column on the left-hand side. And then you have the different land use areas running across the top. Or it would actually be vice versa. It would be the four land use areas running along the top, and then the different uses listed off on the side on the left-hand side. So people could go through and click all that apply for those different areas in town. And then for the land use areas, we're providing just kind of broader descriptions. So different types of commercial uses, a range in residential uses, just in terms of intensity of use. So large, medium, and small lot residential, and giving a general acreage size for those residential lots, small multifamily buildings. So that would just be buildings with 3 to 4 dwelling units, and then larger multifamily buildings with 5 or more units, and then open space and recreation and agriculture and forestry. Um, and so this would just help give us a general sense. I mean, we can kind of anticipate how respondents are going to reply to this question, but I think it's helpful to still have this type of question in the survey.
What do you anticipate?
Well, just generally, in broad strokes, I mean, in the conservation area parts of town, people might be supportive of open space and recreation and agriculture and forestry, but are probably going to be less supportive of manufacturing and industry. And I think it's interesting to see too, where just for some of these different residential uses, like in the residential neighborhoods in town, areas where you've already seen some residential development, what's the level of support for smaller lot residential, less than 1 acre in size? What's the support for small multifamily residential buildings? Um, I would anticipate seeing support for a greater variety of uses in the village. Maybe not manufacturing and light industry, but office, commercial, and different residential uses as well. Um, and then the next few questions deal more with development standards, so less about land use and more about how the town regulates development when it occurs. So this question would ask, do you believe the following development standards in the zoning bylaws are currently too flexible or too restrictive? And these are common things that towns will regulate in their zoning, and Weston already regulates many of these things in its zoning. But so it would include protection of historic structures, landscaping and screening, exterior lighting, signage, stormwater management and drainage, the scale and intensity of development. So that gets at, structure setbacks, lot coverage standards, building design and appearance, and protection of environmentally sensitive areas. And that provides some examples of what those types of areas might be. And then also providing an option for people to provide just general comments too.
I think this one is gonna be I think this one will get more attention just because the nature of it. It's where, this to me is where most people interact with it. So I think that's a really good question on restrictions. Basically, is it too flexible or too restrictive? So, yep, okay.
And then there's a series of yes or no questions. These are some ideas that were included in the town plan recommendations. So there was some discussion about the importance of ridge lines and hillsides in Weston, just in terms of the scenic value of those parts of towns, and concerns about development in those areas and how that may impact some of those scenic views. So, question of, would you support additional review to protect the character and quality of Weston's ridgelines and hillsides? There's also in the town plan a lot of discussion about wanting to preserve the character of the village. One way to accomplish that is through building and site design standards. So this was a question of whether or not people would support that additional building and site design, those types of standards for the village. And I know this is something we started talking a little bit about when we were talking about building height with doing these recent zoning bylaw updates. So it'll be interesting just to kind of gauge a general level of support for that type of thing.
It's a place, where is there a ridge line in Weston that's not developed? It's not developed? Yeah.
I think I'm up behind,
Yeah, and
that's the Coquitlam.
That whole area is not developed yet.
Okay.
I mean, it's all the way, actually, I mean, because then there's national forest, and that's undevelopable.
Yeah.
Well, what is, I don't know where the line with Andover is, but right up above Markham, right here.
That was just recently sold, and I know someone is planning, I think it's a personal,
But there's another lot, I think it's in Andover though, that's also up there.
right?
So, and Andover doesn't have
Something, does it?
They're already developed their ridge line.
exactly, which is really,
How is this gonna be disseminated to the populace?
So we would do the same thing we did last time, which you would do, we would do a email, we would post it on the town site, so anyone can complete it there. We would send out a card with the link on the card, so we will do a postcard to every address in town that is a resident, and non-resident alike. And so that's 560 cards that we send out that has the link that says complete the survey. This is the time it's open and closes. And then we would make paper copies available for anybody who wishes to complete a paper survey. And then we've had people who complain in the past saying, you really need to mail them out. And the problem is you have so much ability to complete these. And Matt recalls last time, because he's the one who ended up inputting the paper versions. But I wouldn't go way too far from what we did last time.
I think up front, it's important to tell public how to look at the bylaws, how to see what's there.
So in the postcard, I think what you would, to your point, I would say,
Link to the zoning, current zoning regs.
yeah, you here's where you find the zoning regulations, anything like that, absolutely. And then we would typically.
Because it's not the easiest thing to find.
No, it isn't, because it's buried under,
Yeah.
multiple pages, but I think what we can also do for this, which we did in the past, is we would, on the homepage of Town of Weston, all of this will be posted, since this is happening at that same time, so we post on the homepage,
Yeah.
have the link to the survey on the homepage, have the link to the zoning bylaws on the homepage, have the postcard go out, have paper copies available. We can then mail anybody who requests a paper copy, we can then send it to them so they can complete it there and then send it back in or drop it off. You can drop it off with Melvin, post office, there's a bunch of things we can do that way.
Yeah, and similar to the town plan survey too, I haven't done this yet, but we would have just a short introduction for people taking the survey. So when they click on the link to take the survey, before they get to any questions,
Explains it.
yeah, it
Yeah.
explains thanks for taking the survey, kind of explaining we're doing this coming out of the town plan update, and we can also link back to the town's website in that introduction too on the survey.
Yeah, well, we could actually hyperlink directly back to the zoning bylaws so they can
Yep.
take a look at it if they want to. And I think we could be instructional. If you haven't looked at the zoning bylaws, we encourage you to go through them before you take the survey type deal and make sure that those types of things happen in there. And then also, I think it's important that we talk about the fact that many of our bylaws, a lot has changed. We, some of the things that we plan to do would be make them easier to use, easier to access, easier to understand. That's part of this process, is making them easier. But on top of that, that the state laws have changed, and so therefore there are bylaws that will be updated that are part of state statute that will be part of it. That's not really, that's the stuff we would stay away from, obviously, in the questions, which I believe you have. So
Right.
to that point, do you think, because we don't have any overlay districts as it stands right now, should that, I mean, in a sense, this building standards is an overlay district.
Right.
In a sense, the Ridgeline is an overlay district. I was also thinking renewables is kind of an overlay concept. And then also the only one that I was thinking that could maybe be controversial is the habitat corridors. So
Yeah.
I was wondering if some of those might want to pop in here as well.
Okay. Yeah, and I think, definitely for the for protecting ridge lines and hillsides, it's common to do that right as an overlay, because those are geographic features that are gonna often span more than one zoning district, underlying zoning district. And then for the village, if the town were to consider building and site design standards, it could be an overlay. It could, because you have a pretty compact village area, you could just write those additional regulations into the zoning just for the village district, right? Because it is pretty compact. But right, the idea is for example, the question about protecting the ridge lines, I try to shy away from using the term overlay zoning district, because it's just
Yeah, I agree.
it's confusing. So But to your point, Jeff, the yeah, for the habitat connectors, it's one we'll definitely look at, just because Weston has, um, you have the conservation zoning district currently. You have some very large blocks of conserved land and federal and state ownership, and that's um, so it may make sense to do some pretty compact overlays, especially kind of on the northern end of town, coming from the state forest across into Green Mountain National Forest. So we could add another question here, similar to these, just about would you, yeah, support additional review to protect, critical wildlife corridors, something along those lines.
Okay.
Um,
I
and
just looked, just so you know, the meeting of the 28th, did I see? Because that's where a lot of that stuff came up.
Mhm.
But I don't see anything in there relative to zoning. So on the 28th, they didn't address it.
okay.
So we will address that as part of our discussion with them to say you need to get your public meeting, that's still there to help you. I did explain to Kim that you still have monies and time available on that plan, so.
Just writing this down. Yeah, and just so you all know too, for when we talk about protecting ridge lines and wildlife corridors, the idea is not to prevent all development from happening in those areas. It's just to make sure it's done in such a way to minimize whatever negative impact. So for ridge lines, we're trying to, you know, you would have some standards to make sure like a home is sited in such a way to reduce that visual impact. And like for wildlife crossing areas, trying to site a home closer to roads and have a buffer in there to protect some of those corridor areas. So we're not just in case questions come up as we get into kind of the public meeting, we're not trying to prohibit development. We're just trying to do it more carefully.
Okay.
And then so then there's just a general question. Do you feel the current zoning bylaws are helping achieve the town plan goal of maintaining the town's historic development pattern with a compact village center within a rural setting surrounded by undeveloped areas? And this is mostly put in there so that if people say no, they can kind of explain some concerns. So it's just trying to um, capture concerns that people might have that may not have come up elsewhere in the survey. And then we always include just a question at the end of asking people to provide any other comments that they have. So I think right now in total we have 10 questions or so. Um, Similar to the town plan survey, which I think it took most people just about 15-20 minutes to get through, which is reasonable.
I think I'm good. I think we're good.
Okay.
Yep.
I think it's very clear too, so
Yeah.
people will be able to understand,
Even you're not that familiar with zoning, there's questions in there you can respond to.
right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Question direction of zoning, so. Okay.
Okay, so for town plan priorities, so I know we're all pretty familiar, just having worked through the town plan, what some of the recommendations in the plan were related to zoning, but just right as a reminder, your zoning bylaws are one of the main ways you can implement the different goals within the town plan. So it is helpful to go through the town plan and reference back to the town plan as we're working on the project. So I just went through chapter by chapter. Um, and in the land use chapter, there's a recommendation, which we will certainly do just to make sure we're in general conformance with the town plan. Um, Evaluate additional locations for commercial growth. So there is in the zoning district, there's a small commercial area separate from the village, north of the village along Route 100. And as we were doing the town plan, we did talk about, are there other areas in town where we could imagine commercial growth going other than that in the village? We don't have to have an answer for that now, but that's something we had added to the town plan to look at. We'll update the planned unit development or PUD provisions to better encourage cluster and conservation developments. So those are developments that focus housing in a smaller area of a property and then conserve more of that property just for open space and recreation. As we were talking about, consider overlay districts for scenic areas, forests, agricultural land, and ridgelines. And then, yeah, consider architectural and site design standards for commercial development. So that's why some of those survey questions were written in that way based on what was in the town plan. The economic development chapter just has a general recommendation on supporting desired business growth and development. Natural, scenic, historic, cultural resources had a number of recommendations that we'll look at. So considering regulations for areas above 2,000 feet, that could also fall under a ridgeline overlay district for areas above 2,000 feet. Drainage areas of upland streams, aquifer areas, and steep slopes. Discourage highly visible development and extensive clearing on ridge lines. Required developments not deplete or contaminate existing water supply systems. That can sort of be addressed through the zoning. That's often addressed through state permitting. That's something the state's going to look at in issuing a drinking water permit. So some of this stuff is handled by local zoning, some is state, some's a little bit of both. Protection for wetlands, that's a state permit, but the town has a shoreland district currently, so that's that section of the zoning, we'd want to look at that and maybe make some updates to. The plan, as you might recall, there's some good language in the town plan just about mineral resources. So this is earth extraction activities, and just from looking at the zoning, I think that could be strengthened in the zoning bylaws. Just based on, you could use quite a bit of the language from the town plan within the zoning bylaws themselves when it comes to just regulating earth extraction activities. Consider historic overlay district for the village. Consider updates to reduce fragmentation of forest blocks. And we already are working on the river corridor regulations through the work that Alyssa has been doing.
Do you have a question?
I have a question.
Mhm.
Is there anything currently in our zoning that regulates areas above 2,000 feet?
There's not in Weston's zoning under Act 250.
Right, but isn't that,
Yeah.
I thought Act 250 was 2,500.
That's right. It's 2,500 for Act 250.
And the reason that I am asking is because we're sitting at 1,290 right here.
Yeah.
Which means that probably the next house above ours, going up Trout Club, is gonna hit 2,000 feet.
No,
Right.
I'm at 1,800.
You are,
Yeah.
okay.
you're much further up, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, no, 2,000 is pretty high up. I think that's actually the end of Trout Club. Right? That's
Right.
that the top property is probably the only one that would.
Okay, I'm just curious about,
Yeah.
just compared to where we are, where 700 more feet is in town,
Yeah.
what that would
Surprisingly,
affect.
it's pretty far up a lot of
Okay.
those roads, it
Okay.
is. Cause I think even Andover's highest point up there is like 2,200 or 2,100.
Up on the ridge.
Yeah. It's surprisingly only a thin sliver, I think, of that.
Okay,
I think Peabody's
Yeah.
215. No, in the south.
Okay.
I was just
Yeah,
curious.
so it's
Yeah.
just, be surprised, it's actually, to back to Lexi's point, I'm not sure how much is gonna flow
Yeah.
into that 2,000
Right,
feet.
and that
Yeah.
about like how
And
much.
much
Yeah,
of
I'm
this
not sure.
park was already in the national forest.
Right,
Right. Right. Yeah, and that's something, in thinking about an overlay district for the ridge lines, just in our GIS systems, we can very easily put together a map just showing the 2,000-foot contour line and existing buildings, and then you can get a sense of where that is exactly. So,
Could
so
we,
it might, yeah.
but Liz, can we do that before the part of the survey? I'm just wondering if we could do that as just, as one of the earlier tasks of information that we should have, so that we can be thinking about what does make sense to do.
Yeah, no, definitely. And I think, it might be, I'm just kind of thinking out loud. Um, like maybe even like for that public informational meeting in September, when we're talking, like we'll have survey results by then. We'll talk about some of these broad ideas of things we're going to look at. And I think if we can have like just a simple map showing the town and kind of where that elevation line is, just to give a sense. We're not saying we're doing this right now, but this is gives you a sense of where those areas are.
Right.
Yeah. Okay. And then just a couple more recommendations for the housing chapter. We want to look at areas where we could support more moderate residential density outside of the village. So this could be some adjustments to minimum lot size and density requirements, not town-wide, but just kind of in select areas, kind of on the outskirts of the village. Reducing barriers to creating accessory dwelling units and multifamily buildings. So just seeing if there are ways to simplify regulations for those types of residential uses. For energy, Jeff, you were mentioning this. We want to, because right now we don't have provisions in the zoning about small scale renewable energy resources. So this might be something mounted on someone's rooftop or a standalone solar panel on a residential property. So there are provisions in statute that require towns to allow these types of facilities on someone's home, but you kind of have some appropriate design standards, just some basic maybe scripting requirements, but nothing too crazy. And it's helpful too to have some general standards for large scale renewable energy facilities. These types of projects are usually going directly to the PUC, the Public Utilities Commission, for approval, and skirting the local review process. But even if a developer is going to the PUC, the town still has standing to provide comments on projects. And so if you have some standards in your zoning, then if something gets proposed in Weston, kind of a commercial scale renewable energy facility, you can just copy and paste from your zoning and say, this is what our local regulations say. And then you're not having to kind of invent something
Right.
if a proposal ever happens. So
This happened in Londonderry.
Where they didn't have a standard and
They didn't have, yeah, and basically just kept the only group that had any say on it was the state government,
Okay.
basically. And the town didn't have anything.
Okay.
And I don't know whether it's still alive, but it's across from Riverside Farm and back at the dump. And the Londonderry dump, then there's a big, large area there that used to be a dumping grounds, and that's 5 acres, and there's a company that's developing a lot of 5-acre sites in Vermont, and
Are they still now given all the pullback from the Fed side of the benefits to that?
well, I sold Riverside Farm just about the time that it was all coming to bear, but it's, there was very little that we could do as a
Okay.
budding.
So that's important then to get this in here. So there's your testimony.
Yeah.
That's what I wanted.
Mhm.
Yeah. And then yeah, for under flood resilience, again, we're working on this already, but river corridor regulations, and then looking at regulation development that might increase runoff and erosion. So that could be similar to some of the recommendations in the natural resource chapter, looking at, you know, limiting or regulating more development in steep slope areas, things like that. So there's some overlap in the flood resilience recommendations and the natural resources recommendations. Um, and just quickly, so the map on the left is the zoning map, current zoning map for Weston. And the map on the right is the future land use map from the town plan. And as you may recall, we did in the town plan, we kind of combined some of the more rural residential districts just to try to make that a little simpler and clearer, the different land use districts in town. And so there will be a similar process with updating the zoning map. The zoning map needs to implement the town plan. It doesn't need to follow exactly what you have in your future land use map, but there will be some changes. I just circled a couple areas too. Just these are like on the north side of town, Route 155. Right now, that's shown as a resource area along that corridor, but we did update the future land use map to show that as a conservation area. That's largely, I think there are a few dwellings up there, but for the most part, that's undeveloped, that part of town. And that's
Yeah.
north of the Priory, too. And then there's also the area on Chester Mountain Road as you get into Andover, which we were talking about, which is also shown as conservation on the future land use map that's right now resource. That might be an area that could potentially fall under a overlay district too, so that might not need a zoning change if it's within overlay. And then in the southwest corner of town, this is just an area that we, because it's an area that's mostly or has a fair amount of our residential development, we had put that in more of a moderate residential density area as compared to the current classification and the zoning as rural low density. Um, so there's some other minor tweaks too, but those were some of the areas that I noticed. But this is something we would work on more like towards the end of the process. Um, and then, so I did send out a very lengthy spreadsheet looking at different sections in statute that relate to zoning requirements as it relates to your current zoning. Um, I um, I was not going to go through all those this evening just because it is a lot of information and it's pretty dense. I'm happy to answer any questions, or if you want to take time between now and the June meeting to look through it and send me an email with questions. I'm also happy to just pull up that spreadsheet too if there's anything that immediately kind of jumped out to you. But just kind of in summary, like with any zoning update project, we're always updating to make sure that we're meeting the statute requirements. Weston is currently, in conformance with many provisions, but there are a lot of sections that are out of date, based on what's required in statute. And as we've talked about too, the approach is going to be to rewrite the bylaws and to still keep keep the standards and regulations you have, but we're kind of starting from scratch, just because of the amount of changes that are needed. Um, and so in that process, we would just, yeah, obviously make sure that we're meeting all the statute requirements. And just to note too, I'm pretty familiar with these statutes. I'm not a lawyer, so we do have money in the budget for the town attorney to review a more final draft of the bylaws. To to and in that process, they're mostly looking at the statute compliance. So that's another review process that we would have.
Matt, talk about the statutes themselves. How often do they change? And
Yeah.
in other words, is it a moving target for us?
It's a good question. It's hard to predict. You never know if there are going to be changes in a legislative session. I would say in 2023, you may have heard of the Home Act in 2023, which had some pretty major changes to what's required in the zoning bylaws, especially around housing, what towns need to allow for housing. So there have been fewer changes since 2023, just because there was a lot of effort put into those reforms. So, I would say like every few years there might be more significant changes. It's usually not every legislative session. And for towns, we just, you update your bylaws based on what is in statute at the time. And then, we and the state communicate to towns when there are changes at any legislative session to the statute requirements. And then unfortunately, it's just a process of keeping those statute changes in mind. So even because statute supersedes the local regulations, so even if your zoning hasn't been updated, you still need to follow the state requirements. So it's kind of up to a zoning administrator to keep track of that. Because I mean, my recommendation, if there's very big changes in statute, I think it's worth updating the zoning. But if it's minor changes, it's a lot of work for a town to be, regularly updating its zoning. So, yeah. But we'll keep an eye on. I don't know I think there's some things out of this legislative session that might impact zoning around agricultural uses. So we'll keep an eye on that.
I mean, if anything, going through this, I was actually surprised. I thought we would be more out of compliance than we are. I
Yeah.
thought most of your comments were you're not out of compliance, but you need to tweak.
Yeah.
And then certainly where we would have been out of compliance, we don't have public water or sewer, so that automatically meant we're not required to deal with those items. And honestly, it seemed that some of the it just seemed that we were not that far out. It's really more of a tweak. At least that's the sense I got from going through all of it. But I think this is a really good vehicle because I think it's very concise. And I think if anybody has questions around it, it points directly to it. And obviously, between that and then the flood side of things, those are again what the state's requiring us to do. So that always makes it easier to say, well, this is what the zoning bylaws need to do. So
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. So yeah, there are lots of things where you can just point to the state and say we have to do this. So, yeah. Okay. But yeah, please, take a look at it. Happy to answer any questions, but a lot of it is very just kind of technical and I agree, it's a lot of the zoning is in conformance. I think a lot of it is updating it just to make the language a little easier to understand. And then just in terms of next steps for the June meeting, I will come back with finalized survey questions and I'll include kind of an introduction. And I will put the survey questions into SurveyMonkey too, so we can kind of see what that looks like in SurveyMonkey. We can talk about just how we're going to promote the survey in the public meeting in September. I did not have a chance to pull together kind of that project schedule for how we're going to go section by section after the public meeting, so I'll have that for at the June meeting as well. And then just to note that DRB meeting on July 1st. And I think that's all I had.
Can you send me this
Yeah.
presentation so that I can use as the foundation for this?
Yeah, I will send you the presentation. And I'm not sure if you're aware yet that Alyssa at WRC unfortunately has taken another job, so is going to be leaving WRC at the end of this month. So just for our flood hazard and river corridor work, I mean, she's already drafted that, and I'm pretty familiar with that those regulations too. So we will be able to still integrate that, and I'm glad she was able to do the work that she did prior to now.
Just not to go on the record for this, but I'm curious how that's going to affect the other major project in town.
Yeah, I know she's reached out to Jim
Okay.
Linville.
Has your boss reassigned someone to it?
We are talking about that on Thursday. So
Okay.
yeah, so
'Cause
along with
that's pretty
other projects as well. So
yeah, but this is a big one for us, so obviously.
it's very much on our radar.
So she's coming out next Tuesday for a meeting with the WCA relative to the Playhouse, and because I'm bringing in the Agency of Natural Resources for a meeting on a planned concept we want to review and see what we're going to run into, or hopefully not run into. I'm assuming I can just tell her I know about this.
Yeah, and I mean, she's made it known, so I will give her a heads up too that I just shared it with
Okay.
you, because I'm still, it's always a little difficult because you never know who has been informed. But I did want to let you know just as it relates to the zoning project and the flood hazard bylaws. So, but I'll give her a heads up that I shared that info with you.
All right. Thank you.
Yeah.
We good?
I'm good.
Do you want to close it?
Move the meeting be adjourned.
Second.
All in favor? Anybody opposed? Nope.
And what's the time? It is 7.
Yes.
No, it's not even 7.
Your sock's doing tough.
It's 6.
Yeah, I think they are.
What is that? 6:53. All right, we're gonna go off the recording now.
Sorry, we're talking about socks.
Thanks, Matt.
Thank you,
Matt.
Matt.
I'll see you in June.
Drink too much tequila.
Oh yeah, happy Cinco de Mayo.
Thank you, Matt.
Bye.
Appreciate it. Okay, see ya. How do I stop the damn recording? I'm just gonna hit the end button.